We have Gene Garlock, Executive Vice President of Worldwide Promotions, Jonathan Gaines, Vice President, Creative Services. We got Andy Harwitz from Atlas, Vice President Production, Guy Norris, late addition, second unit director, and you'll learn more about his role, and Jonathan Limpert, Vice President of Worldwide, not promotions,
Emerging marketing technology.
I knew you had a new title, Emerging Marketing, and I look at emerging technology. So we all work together at Warner Brothers on making this cool stuff and exploring this new medium. And we're just going to throw a few questions around and talk a little bit about the experience of making this piece, and hope you find it interesting. Let's jump off on really the first question is the concept that we worked on. Jonathan, why don't you start us off? How did the idea of the VR for Suicide Squad come about?
It was a really bold question that we started asking early on during our content creation development process, which usually happens right before the film goes into production or during early stages of production. The simple question is, what kind of an immersive experience could we create around this film? How cool would it be for us to be able to give the viewer the opportunity to feel like it was be a member of the Suicide Squad and to have some kind of level of wish fulfillment that only VR and 360 immersive content can deliver. Little did we know with that simple question so far back that we would be sitting here and have this incredible activation that happened around Samsung and across divisional collaboration that continues even into the home entertainment window, starts in the theatrical window and continues in the home entertainment window. And that speaks to the power and the belief in VR and 360 at Warner Brothers. So starting off with that first question, we started bouncing around brainstorming ideas along with our production on-set company, Mob Scene, that was charged with producing our content, with Eric Matthews, our producer of the content with Mob Scene. And then we started reaching out to the filmmaking team, to Andy and the team over at Atlas and David Ayer, and started saying, this is something that we're really interested in pursuing. Little do we know that they were also very interested in 360 and VR content as well, and through osmosis and through this collaborative process, what started out as a simple idea ballooned into this incredible immersive experience that we've
That's great.
yet to see before.
Andy, what was the impetus of the first-person point of view? I know you brought some pictures in the slides.
You know, we started planning this VR project, I think, when we were about 2 or 3 weeks into production already. So when we had sat down and we had gone through some of the ideas that we had had for extra content, there were some very, very basic VR and 360 things. And we got together and we decided that we had such a great team and we had so many amazing action sequences in the movie. And so because we had such a long shoot, we were at the beginning of it, we had the opportunity at that point to plan something really unique. I had went to Guy, who was our stunt coordinator and action unit director, second unit director, and said that we have this opportunity and that Warner Brothers is going to step up and help us really put something really special together and come up with some money to do it. So we started brainstorming, and I didn't realize that Guy and his son Harrison had this big interest in VR and knew a lot more about it than I did. And so it turned into this amazing thing. And of course, what we wanted to do was give the viewer the most interactive experience that we possibly could. And our first idea was, well, what if we could have a viewer actually feel like they are a member of the Suicide Squad going through one of the bigger action sequences in the movie. Of course, there was a whole lot to do to get that to happen, but that's kind of where it started, was we wanted the most immersive experiences we could. And because of that, we had the idea to, let's see if we can have our viewer be a member of the squad.
Yeah, we have an image of that, don't we? Why don't we advance the slides? Please. Okay, pretty please. Can you guys advance the keynote slides? Thank you. Next one. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. You can talk about it.
So that's actually Margot Robbie's stunt double, and that was a rig that we created. I'll let Guy talk a little bit more about the rig that Radiant helped us create, but our stunt doubles obviously worked weeks and weeks and weeks to prepare for this scene and what they needed to do in the coordination. And I think about 4 days before we actually shot the VR experience, we went to her and said, actually, now you're going to do it wearing this. And of course, you know, they were a little bit shocked at first, but they were pros and they figured it out. So as you can see, there's very little visibility there. And there's a tremendous amount that she does that she has to do and hit her marks and do the right thing. So that's actually, for the first person POV portion of it, that's what our actors wore throughout it.
Yeah, there's another one. And there you are, Guy. Tell us a little bit about working with your stunts actors in this.
As Andy was saying, we'd spent a lot of time prepping it, so you know, to shoot as we were traditionally on both the main unit and the action unit. Everyone came to the party and had a really put their best efforts and really wanted to join in. We ended up doing it over 2 sort of half-day periods. The first afternoon or evening was really just going to be all the stunt crew, the doubles, and during the course of that, we had the cast sort of come in and out. We were able to show them literally a very quick onset stitch of it. They loved it, and literally the next morning they all came back on their day off, and we actually then shot all the experiences again from the first person with all the cast being involved as well. So it was a very, very, very good collaborative experience for everybody.
And the cast coming in on their day off is not just them showing up and doing it. Of course, there's 3.5 hours of makeup for Margot that she had to put together. Croc, of course, had to do all of his makeup. So it was a commitment, and our cast were such good sports about it. And again, it was their day off, and they all came in and helped us put this together and
Kind
spent
of
a
a
whole
lot
day
of
with
passion. A lot
Yeah.
of passion around it, yeah. Crazy. Gene, so Samsung partnered with Warner Brothers on this project. At what point did they become involved?
From a promotional standpoint, we had already been talking to Samsung about potentially working with us to help us create some sort of a marketing or promotional program around the release of the movie. We had worked with Samsung in the past, and when the conversation started to happen about the VR opportunity, obviously Samsung seemed to be a natural to start including them into the conversations. To no surprise, based on their presence in the VR space, they had tremendous interest. So from that point on, they started being a collaborator with us on the project, and we're an amazing partner, you know, throughout the entire process of the creation and obviously getting it out into market and helping that be a real anchor and foundation for a lot of really great things that we did to help create the noise around the release of Suicide Squad.
And through the partnership, what platforms were used to experience the VR?
I mean, the most important platform was obviously the Comic-Con experience. And I mean, just out of curiosity, being a VR audience, does anyone from Comic-Con happen to be down there to go through and see the Suicide Squad experience? Great, so some of you have a point of reference. And that was really the objective behind the relationship with Samsung on this film and on this experience. And you know, as we've sort of evolved at Warner Brothers and are looking at VR in different ways and on different films, it is interesting that not always is the objective for the use of the VR experience the same film to film, but for this one it really was about creating some really great immersive experience at Comic-Con. It worked perfectly with the release and the timing of the movie. We invited media that gave us over 300 different placements for media and almost 25 million impressions during the few days at Comic-Con. It showed up as well on their Samsung VR app. They used it at their store in New York City for demoing. So there was a lot of different touch points that we were able to use the experience in and around, again, the release of the film to create this tremendous event, which hopefully contributed to the success of Suicide Squad at the box office.
Right. So John, how did the VR content and Samsung's partnership contribute to overall marketing of the film? I mean, we heard some samples right there.
Yeah, I think that for us, it's always important to try to develop really immersive experiences at Comic-Con, and this, to me, was one of the most impressive examples of that we had, where you were literally brought into what was a reconstruction of Belle Rev, and there were so many different experiences you could go through. This was actually the first time I'd ever taken a picture with a group of friends with the Samsung VR camera, and it was just very fun, I think, for me and everybody here, and even the people at Comic-Con, to experience that for the first time and see, oh, well, this is how this works. And then just by that immersive experience sort of led to, when you went through the VR, feeling like it was even more part of the movie and you were actually there. And I think it contributed by just people just getting really excited, and it's sort of heightening the interest in the film overall.
Yeah, you know, some people talk about storytelling as if we read a story, we really rely on our imagination. But when we go to a movie and see a big screen, we have the gift of observation coupled with our imagination. Now with VR, you actually are adding in other senses. So it becomes a real sensory experience to achieve presence, some of the motion chairs, the 4D effects and all that. So that kind of total immersion is kind of what you guys were at. I mean, you guys from a creative point of view, you were trying to make someone feel, like Jonathan said, in the scene. And did you feel like you achieved it, or were there things you'd do differently, you know, now if you could do it over again? Because that was a year ago, and technology advances so fast.
I mean, I think so. I mean, of course, as I said, we kind of planned this whole thing last minute, and I
Sure.
think without Guy and his son being able to work with Radiant and create these kind of rigs, we would have never been able to do what we did. But of course, we learned so much throughout the process, and again, that was a year ago. So I think it was a great learning experience to know at least what we can and can't do, because we were kind of learning as we were going on this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think from a production standpoint, you know, we of course planned this and put this together while we were already shooting the movie. I think going forward, as we do more of these, I think being able to really plan a specific day in your schedule, when you're building out a 100+ day schedule on a movie of this size, you know, there are no days where you could just take, hey, we're just going to use half the day and go do this, because everyone looks at you like you're crazy. So I think being able to plan from the pre-production stage of an actual film and know that, okay, we're going to take this whole day and we're going to dedicate all of our resources to doing this shoot and create it the way we did. I think, you know, we got really lucky and we had a great crew and a great cast that played along, but I think going forward, what I would do from a production standpoint is really be able to plan it going into it and know, okay, this day we're going to do a VR experience and have more time to do it. I think we were really stretched and pushed for time on this one.
I mean, in many ways, this project was a great proof of concept
Sure.
for us over at the studio. So to Andy's point, you know, we're looking at now films that are about to go into production or on the development slate is like, how do we start, you know, identifying the titles that warrant a VR experience so that we can get out in front of it and be a forethought and not come in at the last minute and try and scramble to put something together.
Do you think that over on the other track in the other building this morning, John Canning led a panel talking about previs, pre-production planning, and to Andy's point, it's the old adage, right? The more you plan ahead, the less you have to fix it in post, so to speak. Talk a little bit about the post-production process, the vendors that were used, the things that had to be done that you may or may not have anticipated.
Again, for us, we were so stretched for time on this. I think with what we wanted to accomplish, we knew that, you know, when we started talking to vendors and the actual partners we ended up with, what we had realized is what our goal was, we just didn't have enough time to do, especially all through one vendor. Which is why we split up the work. And so MPC, who was a great partner with us and did the cable cam side of it, they of course, you know, were doing the visual effects for the actual scene in the movie. So they were the right partner, and not only because of that, but because they had been doing so many amazing things in VR. We went down right to the wire. I think we delivered that piece, I think, a week before Comic-Con. And then in knowing that we wanted to do something additional and one house just couldn't accomplish everything we wanted to accomplish, we went to Legend because we had heard so many good things about them. And the first-person POV piece was a very difficult piece to put together because we had to essentially recreate the character in a CGI, and we, of course, wanted it to be 3D. So because we had two great vendors splitting up the work, we were able to accomplish on a really, really tight schedule. But it was tough. It was every day, and again, we went right up to the wire a few days before Comic-Con and we finally finished it.
And I think it's worth talking about why we were trying stuff that really up to that stage hadn't been done. And when we first were approached by Andy about doing it, and all the discussions I've had with my son Harrison, was everything we'd seen previously was literally a camera on a stick, and the audience would be always far away, and it's not a way that we would go and enjoy seeing a film. So for us, it was approaching it how you do it just from a filmmaking experience. So the two rules we had going into even manufacturing the camera was we had to be able to do close-up, and we had to be able to move the camera. And they were the two limitations that previously people just weren't really able to do. So that added a lot to the post in the fact that the rig you're seeing there was actually 17 modified GoPros. So when you're talking about at that era, you know, all of them had to be turned on. There was no syncing. It all had to be post-stereo converted. So all of that is a totally different situation to what's available today. Like, you know, I can see there's two Ozos up here now, and they're literally, you know, stitch, you know, stereo out of the box, single cable, all sunk. So if we're doing stuff in digital today, it's really based on the technology. And everyone, all the way from Warner's through Atlas and all the way to MPC and Ledger, they were doing stuff for the very, very first time because no one had done the kind of level of work with movement we were doing with that many cameras. So that's the big thing to really recognise in it as well.
And live action too. I think our whole goal was we kept repeating to ourselves over and over, we want this to be live action. We didn't want to create a CG world in VR. We wanted to do something really different and have the entire experience be fully live action, which again was helping to accomplish our goal to make it as immersive as you can, but just to feel real. We didn't want you to feel like you were in a CG world. We wanted you to feel like you're in the real world and you're right there with the squad in that scene as they fight their way through it.
Let's talk about that for a second. When you guys observed people's reactions, which we saw in some of that reel at Comic-Con, how important was that it was live action and you know, was the stunt doubles as opposed to a CG? And John, you've taken CG VR to Comic-Con. How much different did you see it from other press experiences? Was it a real big difference in the reaction?
Yeah, I think because not that many live action things of this scale had been done, it was quite a different reaction. And the other thing that was really interesting was the addition of some haptic feedback. I believe there were vests that you would wear with the experience, and with every motion or every sort of bullet shot, you would feel it, and what a big difference that made, I think, for everybody who went through it as well.
And it was pretty polarizing. I mean, I think our biggest concern with the POV piece, before Legend assured us that it wouldn't be an issue, but that motion sickness would be an issue. And because you couldn't anticipate the moves that the character was doing, and you were kind of trying to catch up. But Legend did such a good job making sure that wasn't an issue. But I think Guy had an idea while we were shooting the piece, essentially, to do a cable cam piece as well. So that's why we had that piece. And the intention of that was, in case there was going to be a motion sickness issue with the first-person POV piece, we had this other piece that was a much smoother piece that we could use that would be able to say, okay, well, if this is causing people to get sick, we can show them this piece. But I think the reactions we were actually pretty surprised. We had thought that the cable cam piece was going to be the piece that most people leaned into, but it was really 50-50. I mean, there was half the people coming out saying they loved the POV piece, half the people coming out saying they loved the cable cam piece. So it was a really good idea to do both, and it was really 50-50 in terms of people's reactions to them.
There was a subtle thing that you mentioned that that became subtle to me, and that it wasn't sort of a bolt-on, but it was really an integrated part of the film, and with set and with script and everything else. How much of a role did that play in the whole concept? Anybody?
Well, I think enormously. That was the great attraction to that particular sequence, because it was really, it was a perfect in the round sequence where you had all the cast members coming into a room, then they were attacked by 30, 40 odd of these EAs, as we call them. And so it was really theatre in the round. Mm-hmm. And so what we were able to do was really plan that on a basis that in any of the sort of arcs, so you'd be watching it, there was Deadshot who was doing his work there, behind him was Boomerang, over there was Katana, and then there was Croc, and behind it we structured it, that was Margot Robbie's character, Harley Quinn, and then the others behind them. So we staged it so there was something happening in every quadrant. So what was interesting, when we see people actually watch it, we're so familiar with it now, we know exactly where they're looking. And the thing is that every single person is looking at something different. So when they look at it again, they're looking at a new experience again. So the fact of being able to do it as a piece of the actual film, I think that was a big part. You go and see the film, and then you come out and immerse yourself in an actual sequence out of it, and you get to really understand where you are in it. So I think that's important.
Oftentimes when you're done with a project, people say, what would you do different if you could do it over again? Switch that around. Now that we've done this and the excitement and the learnings, what do you look forward to do creatively, knowing that the technology is advancing and the skill set and tips and tricks and techniques are now advancing? You guys?
When we did the Suicide Squad project, it was interesting because, as you heard, the conversations sort of started with the home entertainment group and then sort of bubbled down through the filmmakers. As a company at that time, I think we were having a lot of sort of separate conversations about VR. In the theatrical group, we would sit back, and if we had partners coming on board to support the film, maybe a Microsoft or a Qualcomm or a Samsung, a VR conversation might bubble up about how that could support the release of a movie. And our digital team was looking at opportunities in the digital group about how a digital VR experience might, again, help the marketing. But at that time, we really weren't collaborating really closely as a company and as a group, which has changed dramatically over the last just, few months here. And it sort of maybe speaks just the evolution of how quickly the whole space is changing. I think number one, we all sort of hang on each other just for information so we can stay up to speed on how it seems to change every single day. But I do think as a company, we're really looking at it more collectively as how it can really benefit from the start of a project through the theatrical release, the home entertainment and digital, and again, the streams down the road, maybe to some point monetizing as well. So it is just a much bigger, more sort of immersive collaborative process at Warner Brothers. So.
And that life cycle approach is continuing with something we're continuing to look at with all of our projects. How can we have something that starts in theatrical and continues on and has a natural extension in the home entertainment window? And for Suicide Squad, Samsung has continued to be a partner for us and is partnering with us with a stadium tour, taking the VR experience to NFL stadiums throughout the country. We're also going to be including this experience as part of our digital product for the home entertainment release. So we've gotten a lot of mileage and value out of this one piece of content across divisional, and our hope is to be able to replicate that and expand it as we continue to go down the road.
It's really become the model for what we want to do moving forward in all the different streams and different divisions that could work with it, and just the way it came together so perfectly with everybody's involvement here.
And from a storytelling point of view, the great thing about it being a very successful sort of concept, proof of concept, is that there's other ways you can use it. So it's maybe a situation where you can have a branching storyline. You could go on a journey with some of the cast or a story thread that you don't necessarily see in the film. So because it works so well, it's also that was an action piece, but it's really a great tool for telling drama and story and narrative as well. So I think that's hopefully where we'll see a lot of it going as well, where it's not just an experiential piece. You can actually start getting into the structure and narrative of a story based around it as well, and that can join up, and again, that's got a much longer life as part of the film as well.
Yeah, we've talked internally about the franchise being so rich with character and story, and the medium like VR and others like AR and mixed reality will give us an opportunity to keep the story alive throughout a duration, as opposed to having big tentpole points. But as Jonathan, you've kind of schooled me on this about how we can use this to keep story and character and awareness in our fan base, and it's a mutually reciprocal thing. It's good for us and it's great for the fan. Any parting comments? Since I think we got 2 minutes left. We're at our 2-minute warning here.
I mean, Greg, I do think that as we talk about looking forward, I think the big challenge, to no surprise, is always trying to stay ahead of the curve, both creatively and with the technology. And I think that's always going to be a challenge here, at least where we are right now with this, because it seems like just every single day when you feel like you're on top of what the technology is, what the latest and greatest thing is, it's changed.